American thinking, on the other hand, has gone towards the development of massive carriers, often nuclear-powered. These, the largest of man's mobile creations, are able to convey and support several different types of aircraft. Carriers provide the U.S. with the option of sending its potent air power to areas where it does not control airstrips, as was the case in various stages of the Second World War, the Korean conflict, Vietnam, and more recently, the Persian Gulf. The American attack carrier can only be perceived as the ultimate gunboat. But if an aircraft carrier is to provide the weapons, it is also an inviting target. With up to 5,000 lives and an almost irreplaceable amount of technology, aircraft carriers are vulnerable to aerial attack. To counter this threat, the United States Navy relies almost entirely on one remarkable aircraft, the Grumman F-14 Tomcat. America's involvement with... To counter the Soviet threat, the Navy had to develop a very special aircraft. Not a fighter in the tradition of previous conflicts, rather a long-range, all-weather interceptor. To fill the role, McDonnell Douglas developed the F-4 Phantom II. The F-4 Phantom II was a massive plane for its time. It provided the speed, altitude, and range that would keep missile-carrying aircraft at a safe distance. Its most important feature, and a break from previous convention, was the use of two crew members, a pilot and a radio intercept officer. The RIO provided the pilot with valuable radar and target tracking information. The pilot's role was to get the aircraft as close as possible to its prey, because the F-4 was designed around another revolutionary concept. It had no guns, only radar-aimed missiles. The Phantom not only proved a successful aircraft for the Navy and the Marine Corps, but an aircraft had been contemplated by Secretary of Defense Robert McNamara in a project named TFX, or Tactical Fighter Experimental. Later designated F-111, two versions had been contemplated, the Air Force version and a carrier-based Navy fighter to be given the all-important task of fleet defense. The principal differences in the two airframes were in the forward fuselage, the landing gear, and the wingtip. The shorter forward fuselage on the Navy version would accommodate a folding radome for carrier deck parking. The station geometry, provision for escape, subsystems, and oxygen system are the same in both cockpits, and controls, displays, and instrument systems were made common wherever practical. When the wings were swept back, a near optimum configuration for low drag, high-speed flight was produced. Although the TFX project was mainly the brainchild of General Dynamics, most of the Navy's F-111B was subcontracted to Grumman Aviation. The F-111B, while a multi-role fighter, also had to accommodate the massive Phoenix missile. However, because the basic design called for a medium tactical strike aircraft, the overall concept resulted in a plane the Navy considered far too heavy for carrier use. By the time this rare footage of the Navy's version of the TFX was shot, the project had already been abandoned, and the carrier trials were a mere formality. This despite several successful firings of the Phoenix. The principal problem of the F-111B may have been the inability to reduce the aircraft weight below 80,000 pounds. But there were also other problems, including the undercarriage, side-by-side crew position, and a general lack of pilot visibility on landing. At no stage was the Navy, with its special needs, optimistic about adopting a fighter, which in every other way was an Air Force bomber. By the late 60s, the Defense Department recognized it had no replacement for the now aging Phantom. Worse still, information was becoming available that Soviet engineers had produced land-based swing-wing fighters with superior performance.
Crusader was started in late 1952. Over 15 years ago. It became operational 11 years ago. Our F-4 was a clearly superior fighter when it became operational in 1961. Now the gap
the variety of models and weapons formats to try and produce a concept that could both act as a dogfighter as well as a fleet defense fighter. Their Model 303 clearly filled the requirement. Benefiting from lessons learned in the TFX program, the new aircraft was to rely upon expensive but proven materials such as boron and titanium. The wing box area was doubly strengthened against failure. Two turbofan engines would provide speed and economy, and two separate fins would ensure aircraft stability should one engine fail. The Model 303 was to carry the widest weapons spectrum of any warbird then in service. It carried an M61 cannon for close encounters and dogfighting, the traditional short and medium-range Sidewinder and Sparrow missiles, and the long-range, deadly accurate Phoenix. The concept behind Model 303 would be a lesson to all aircraft builders faced with the problem of having to provide an aircraft that would not only bring them into line with enemy weaponry, but also, because of the cost of development, ensure that a single plane could maintain a competitive edge for years to come. By the 21st of December, 1970, the prototype now